James O'Keefe, he had the whole spat about leaving Project Veritas. I think they're going under now, if I'm not mistaken, or a lot of people have left. But a couple of big stories he's broken in the last week, part of OMG, O'Keefe Media Group, working title, I guess. One of them has been IBM has apparently this huge program inside the RedHat company. Now, the RedHat company is like a software developing company, huge company, started in the 90s. I read about this the other day. IBM acquired them almost 10 years ago, or a little less than that, for billions, right? So they're a bit of a subsidiary. They are a subsidiary of IBM, operating a bit on their own, is what I meant to say. But they've been doing some training, and they released a thing called the 10 Commandments of being an ally, or of allyship. So it was really weird stuff to, they were saying, as a white person, you have to admit it's your fault for racism. Only white people can be racist. White people have to, you know, be the solution. But James O'Keefe said there's been actually more than 100 whistleblowers now from IBM and Red Hat. I think I keep saying White Hat. Some Syria on my mind, I guess. But IBM and Red Hat, and there's been over 100 whistleblowers, and they keep coming out with more stuff and sending them some more stuff. So I had an AM Fest podcast with Tim Pool, Tucker Carlson, and Charlie Kirk, I think it was. He released some more stuff. And one of the slides, and these comes from their like internal employee handbook sort of thing, and slideshows. So you can see the Red Hat logo in the corner. This one says, "How does whiteness work?" And we'll just read this, I guess, cycle. They're saying it starts. It all goes through, and we'll start with power. It says, "White is the default. Everything else exists in proximity to it." Read below. Whiteness constructs the game, hides the rules, then rigs the game over and over again. Then we go down to divide and conquer. Spaces are determined by race. Those spaces focus inward. Non-white spaces are easily othered and then judged accordingly. And then we go over to blindness on the left-hand side, which says white people don't know what we don't know. So what we do get carefully taught is what's passed down. Lies and omissions of the truth get equal billing in what we are taught. Now, this is very confusing, specifically the part that says white people don't know what we don't know. But the first thing I wanted to ask you about was, white is the default. Everything else exists in proximity to it. That for me is hard to believe. Now, I get what they think they mean, but in reality, white people weren't the first people to exist. And the Chinese dynasties have been around just as long as European countries and, other Muslim countries and I want to say dynasties just for simplicity's sake, but Muslim, Muhammad and Genghis Khan, and then we can go through history, I guess. But my point here is how is it that we're focusing on, white societies when they weren't even the first to begin with? I don't understand where this comes around. Do you think they have any merit to claiming that everything revolves around white people?
No, I mean, and I try to watch my words because I hate when like other races cry and they're like, "Oh, you just hate us. You're anti this or anti that." It's annoying as hell. But like, and I don't say, like, if someone calls me like mayonnaise or something, or even my skin looks nice and golden right here, like, I don't care about that stuff. Even we're going to talk about the black-white football game. Like, to me, that's kind of funny. But in general, like, I do think there is a lot of like anti-whiteness, for lack of a better word. For example, and I don't just say that and run away like other, and like, oh, this is why, and then they can't explain it. It's like when they talk about a lot of environmentalism, right? They'll always just harp on certain countries like Europe and America. And it's like, okay, well, when it comes to certain pollutions and stuff like China and India, and it's a math equation. So if you really care about the mathematics of climate change as they claim to, then you have to say who's doing it, who's buying it. Like, you can't just say, well, it's just the white countries, but then like they don't ever talk about China. Like you said, China just kind of, it's like culturally kind of like quiet, like a billion people, but like, no, we're going to just everything revolves around you. Like, are you saying in some countries in the whole world? Like, what are you trying to say? I think that they're the type of people that hang out with each other and they all tell each other they're right. And anybody that doesn't agree with them is too afraid to tell them that what they're saying is stupid. So they just keep saying it to the point where, like, as somebody that could appreciate perhaps a PowerPoint against my ethnic group that made sense or was kind of funny or intellectual, where I could have been like, I don't agree with that, but I get where they're going. I don't even know what they're talking. Like it's just really dumb. It's very like low IQ, very like late stage liberalism, where like it makes more sense to be like, oh, the incarceration rate, or there are talking points that like kind of make sense, but that one is a new one, and I think they're kind of just running out of. I mean, I don't know. That chart was pretty dumb. I would give it like a 1.3 out of 10. You know, even Sean King, I would give like a 3.
Sean King, isn't he the best? Somehow he's got millions of followers. But I think there might be I think they incorrectly frame the argument where you could make an argument, in China, Chinese culture is predominant, and they might look down on a prevailing culture that comes up from a smaller minority. But a lot of these countries where they have one predominant culture, they aren't nearly as tolerant as the United States. If you go to Japan and complain about how Japanese it is there and how they don't adhere to black American culture or white German culture or something like that, they'd be like, too bad. In the United States, they say, okay, well, let's try to accommodate that. We're this big melting pot. We do all this stuff. So if you were to say that white is the predominant culture in the United States, we would like to be included. I think that's sort of the same argument, but in a way that makes people not think you're a dumbass and just be like, white people started racism. They're responsible for all of it around the world, and they must be the ones to fix it. It just presents itself as a terrible viewpoint that isn't grounded in the reality of history around the world, to act like all white Americans are the purveyors of racism and historical uh, discrimination across the world. It just doesn't make any sense. And I think you'd have a much better time of it if you just say, hey, we want to be included in these things, even though I don't particularly think people are excluded and haven't been for a long time. And they talk about, and there's more slides, by the way, and they talk about white spaces are easily othered, or non-white spaces are easily othered. I think it would be the white spaces that were othered. And personally, if you have I don't know how you feel about this, but if you have an all one race space, I think that's kind of weird. If it happens naturally, then it happens naturally. But if you go out looking for only Uruguayan people and you're in America, not even nationality actually makes more sense, way more sense. But there's black Brazilian people, there's white skinned Brazilian people, light skinned Mexicans, all these sorts of things. If you go out looking for a Mexican only space at a college or something, and again, I'm using nationality, but of a skin colored base place in a college or university campus, I think that's kind of weird because, as I think I mentioned on your show, there's not similarities just between people just because they're from the same race. Like you can be on the other side of the world, and I'm not Irish. I don't have much in common with Irish people from Ireland or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And that's where America kind of screwed itself in some ways. Like, it was a good idea that fell flat because it preserve its ideals. My example is this: like, America was the great. I don't know if the melting pot. I've heard that was propaganda, but there were a lot of people coming, mostly from Europe at first, all different types of Europe, and there was inter. I don't like the word racism because it's overplayed, but like racial, division. Like Irish
Mm-hmm.
I'm Italian, and even my grandfather told me when he was marrying my grandma that some people didn't want them to get married, and he's super
Yeah.
white, but he was Italian. They didn't like Italians at the time or whatever. They had a bad rap in America, so there was always that division. But what made America special was everyone came here, everybody assimilated, and everybody said, "I'm leaving my ethnicity at the door. I'm just American." And then 30 years later, everybody uses it against you. So I think we got kind of tricked in a way because I see both sides of the argument. On one, I'm a mixed person of, Italian, Polish, Puerto Rican, Czechoslovakian. I'm mostly European, but I'm part Hispanic. And I can't just claim one ethnicity because even in Europe, I have like two or three, Poland and Italy being the predominant ones. So, I think that they told everybody to forget about like where you came from. You're American now, but that's not really the way the world works. And on one hand, I think you should judge an individual by the content of his character. My friend groups have nothing to do with like, oh, I'm with you. Like if you're white and you're super annoying or untrustworthy, like I'm never going to hang out with you. It comes down to like, can I trust you? Can I bring you around and you not make a scene? And it's like, yeah, there's people of all races that don't fit the bill, and there's people of all races that do fit the bill. So that's how I judge my friends, my work. Like work with people, I make songs with people. Are they good? Do I like them? But on a whole scale, like it is a sort of thing where if you go to China, they're not trying to be anything else but Chinese. If you go to a lot of parts of Africa, they're not trying to be anything else. And there is some racial division still in places like South Africa, where you have a small minority and a large majority. And in America, I think one thing that people don't understand is that, or maybe they do now, the white people, Europeans, like first of all, they took away your European heritage and they just said you're white, so now you don't even like really know what you are, because like you said, Irish is not the same as Italian. You don't have the same cultures, the same, like there's maybe like a overlap in a lot of things, and you might feel more similar to a European than someone from Asia, but it's not the same, and they kind of took that away from people and told people to like forget about it or leave it at the door. And then you get here, and then the Overton window against the white people, the group that they just made of Europeans or wherever people came from, is now so far gone that like they're basically on the attack against you, and even defending yourself as racist. So it's been like 30 years of like quote unquote white people, which is a group that they just like jumbled everybody together under. You can't like, and people have allowed it to happen and lost that culture war for 30 years. And only now are they starting to do it. But here's the thing about demographics, like it's just true. If you grew up in a 98% white town, right, and you're not paying attention to how mathematics, statistics, immigration, whatever happened, you look at the elementary school or the middle school, and you'll notice a 98% white town, there's now 80%, Hispanic, Black, whatever in those schools. Like that's going to be the town in 20 years. Like it's going to turn into that, where it's like, I'm not saying everyone can't get along, but if like, I would use Dearborn as an example, and no disrespect to the people there. God bless Dearborn. But I believe Henry Ford used to work out of Dearborn, Michigan, had some automotive stuff going on there. It's probably a predominantly extremely white place. And now it's like an Islamic place. You know what I'm saying? You go there and there's Islamic shops. They're waving Palestine flags, and it's like it is what it is. I mean, that's not the part that really I'm not crying about it. I'm just saying like it's not what it was. So, it's like if you go to Italy, it's not going to be like America. If you go to Africa, it's not going to be like Italy. And America was a distinct place that's going to turn into something completely different. And I think that white people have been put on the defense so much they don't even know. And I see both sides of the argument. On one hand, I judge people by the content of their character, but I also notice certain patterns. And it's like, you can notice crime patterns, you can notice demographic shifts, you can notice voting patterns. Like I don't hate women, but if all women voted, the whole country would be Democrat. If all men voted, the whole country would be Republican. That's not a hateful state. That's a factual statement. If you look at certain ethnicities, if it was all that, Republicans lose every election ever. And I don't even like the Republican Party, but it's like liberal socialist policies will take over. And I believe that they're going to take more of my tax money. I think that they're going to start more wars, possibly. Like, this is the reality. So I think Republicans are rightfully kind of afraid to say anything. So basically, they have us on like a slow roll, where you look at even like England, it's like the number one baby name is Muhammad. So it's like people could say what they want, but in 50 years, England is going to look like the Middle East. Like it's going to be a mixture because people are mixing and stuff. And one more thing, I don't know, I'm bringing up a lot of controversial points, so I might as well just bring this up. Most people, if a Black person and a white person have a baby, most of the time they just say the baby's Black. You know what I'm saying? They don't usually say I'm white and Black. So it's like white people, they actually like, if they mix, the kid is not even going to consider itself white most of the time. So it's like, that's just like something I noticed. I'm like mostly white, but like some people will be like, oh, I knew you were Hispanic. I could tell, I don't care. I'm not sensitive. It doesn't really matter. I don't care what people think, but that's just the sort of thing is like, mathematically, it seems like, Asia wants to stay Asia. Africa wants to stay Africa. A lot of countries have super heritage. In America, like white people and European people are being told basically like, you're not allowed to have an area. You're not allowed to have a neighborhood. You're not allowed to have a country. And if you don't like that, you're a racist. And it's like, okay, and most people just kind of put up with it because they're afraid to say something. But it's like, that doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem like a fair, equation if everyone else can are allowed to have a country that white people just have to not, and then be told that they're bad people because of the color of their skin and that they run the world, and some stupid Venn diagram that some moron made at IBM.
Here's the next slide, and I think it gets dumber. I didn't analyze these next two as much, but it says what's been under the microscope, and this touches on basically what you said: black behaviors, which whether it's voting or crime, you can point to black culture. I mean, rap, the same stuff. Black history. I don't know. Like, is black history being under the microscope bad? I don't think so. Black oppression, yeah, that's is that not what they want? Black celebrities, black art, and black stories. I don't understand what's been under the microscope. Like, you need a definition for that. Like, is that traditionally means paying close attention to it, but some of these I think you would consider it's been under the microscope for bad reasons, but then also for good reasons. But then they go to the other side that makes you think that the left side's supposed to be all bad, like, perceived as bad, and they say the real problem is white judgment, white theft, white history, white supremacy, white allowance, white elitism, white censorship. And these are basically all the same thing. I mean, in their eyes. What's the difference between white elitism and white supremacy? It's
Not,
this
not
one's
very
almost
smart
too
people.
stupid.
Not very smart people making this stuff. This is not the smartest like race breakdown I've ever seen.
And this is what bothers me is that somebody at IBM or Red Hat was paid a lot of money to come up with this. And this uh, racial justice economy that has been built where it goes, well, your company better not be racist. You better be fighting against racism. They say, okay, what can we do? Please tell us. They say, hire a DEI instructor or hire this company of this person that I recommend or I know. And that person says, here are all the things I can teach you about it. Keep paying me because you'll never not be racist. So you got to keep paying me to come up with stuff. And this is what they come up with. Like, every time you look at what they're teaching, and I've looked in depth at Boston specifically. I looked in depth at what they're teaching on a city level and what their racial justice plan is. It's crap. It's garbage. Like, not just theologically as it is a religion, but poorly written, poorly conceived, and poorly drawn out. Just as this is. What about black excellence? Like, what does that mean? It's accomplishments. Same thing as achievement. Same thing as contribution. Black is beautiful. What does that mean? Like, we're not supposed to have racial superiority, but you're saying just being black is beautiful. Black intelligence, what does that mean? The only one here that, like, black innovation, but we go on back to the other side. But what is black innovation if not black stories, black heart, black history, and black culture? So, like, this person's just, and then the problem, white erasure. This
Yeah,
is like when somebody's
if you put white in front of any of those things, like white joy, like they would be like raging. They're like, "What? White people are happy?" You're like, "Yeah, it's Christmas time. They're singing carols." Like, what?
it reads like somebody who's desperately trying to meet the word count on an essay or something like that. Excellence, but also joy and achievement and contribution.
ChatGPT,
Bad
can
stuff.
you give me a low IQ race breakdown with some charts, please? But don't make it too smart, or else they'll catch on. It's interesting. For as much stuff as I say, like in the race department, I don't get called racist anymore. I don't get messages of people getting mad at me. I have like probably tens or hundreds of thousands of black supporters all over the place, in the hood, in other countries, rich, poor. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I just tell it like it is, and it doesn't come from a place of hate or malice. And I think that people can see that. And this is where I'm actually unpopular in the conservative movement, is I don't disagree. I mean, that, like I said, was just super low IQ, just like really dumb chart. Like just too stupid to even really talk about, because like there's not that much to bounce off of, because like it's one of the dumber race charts I've ever seen in my life. But if like people are complaining about race and history, they're making a good point in some cases, and I give them the credit for certain things. But then we need to have a real conversation, because on one hand, I think we could all coexist. On another hand, I think it's okay to mix and mingle and have friends outside of your ethnic group, of course. But also, there are certain differences, and we need to be honest about them. And my thing to the left, which they'll never accept, is you could point out all this stuff, but you can't cry racism when I point out other stuff, like if you want to point out white theft, I'm not going to cry and call it racist. What are we talking about? Like, what is white theft? Are you talking about historical? Are you talking about like financial? Are you talking about like petty white crime in a suburb? Or, I don't care. But if I said black crime, does that bother you? Are we allowed to look at crime statistics? Does that bother you? Because I'm not bothered by, saying white people did messed up stuff in history. I think they're doing messed up stuff now. And those same white people are pissing me off every day and taking 30 something percent of my income. So it's like, I don't think you're wrong about some of these things. And it's still happening. I agree that oppression's still happening. But let's have a real conversation. If you go in America and Google in every state in America, what's the safest spot? What's the safest neighborhood in Florida? Marco Island. What's the racial demographics of Marco Island? Look it up. What's the most crime-filled area? You do that in every state, you'll notice a certain pattern. And then we could bring to the table with different ethnicities and different, politics. Why? You know what I'm saying? I'm willing to get like everything is not like, okay, it's all your fault. It's like, okay, why is it happening? And they'll talk about history, this and that. But let's admit it's happening and then why, and then try to fix it. But we can't fix anything and we can't make a better country if everyone's just lying all the time. And I wouldn't even just say it's just left wingers lying, because there's Republicans that stand up there and they say, I'm this race and I'm this gender and this is why you need to vote for Trump. And it's all identity politics. It's all surface level. It's all fake. It's all low IQ. And everyone's just trying to be really dishonest. And as everybody's lying about it, these patterns continue. And it's not making everybody happier. And it's actually making integration harder when people aren't being honest with each other. And it's like everything is already integrated, but it's like, if you look at Paris, it's like it's way crappier than it was 20 years ago. Why? Like, do you want it to go that direction? Does it have to go that direction? Like, why is LA so bad? Why is San Francisco so much crappier? Why is New York? Like, I see all these problems and I'm willing to give and take a little. I'm not one of these people that sits here and say, oh, the same way they'll be like, black people invented everything and they've never done anything wrong and it's all white people. It's like, it's not true. But also it's not true that like white people are completely innocent. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sitting here, we've done everything great and we're the perfect and we've never done. No, let's really talk about how people historically have right and wronged each other. And let's have a real conversation about it. And let's really try to fix a solution, but nobody really wants to do that.
Turn it up, Jordan.